Okay guys, so for your double exposures, when you scan your negatives, they're already going to be black and white. If you need to make them, for some reason, do need to turn them black and white, gradient map is one way to do that. There's also the black and white adjustment layer. Remember, if you're not seeing all this stuff, window layers. All right, so if you needed to, gradient map, not a colored one, although you could do that for a creative effect. So there's a gradient map. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And I'm actually just going to duplicate this layer one time and turn this into a smart object. Right click, duplicate layer. And you can also hit Control J. So Control J does that as well. Right click, convert to smart object. And the reason I like to convert to smart object is because if you use the camera raw filter, and you've had a smart object, it's really easy to go back in and modify if you want to make changes later. So the camera raw filter is opened up. You might want to play with your exposure with these. I think the texture is a nice slider to play with. Your black and your white slider, your contrast, and your exposure. So do you want to make the whole thing a little bit darker, a little bit lighter? I think I actually might drop it down a little bit. And then maybe bump up this texture, this clarity. There's a dehaze slider that can be nice as well. So play around with those things. If the highlights are getting too bright, you can knock those down. All right, if you want less contrast, you can knock that down. All right, and if you're happy, then say okay. The nice thing again about turning it into a smart object is if you decide later you want to modify it, one, you can turn your eyeball on and off to see if you made it better or worse. Two, you can double click on here and it will reopen that for you. Something else you'll want to definitely consider is cropping, especially because your frames are likely not lined up nicely. So, and then in this one, the backdrop wasn't quite big enough, right? So we're going to crop it. Crop to a standard size. Crop to like a normal photo size. I would not recommend just cropping freeform to a random size. So standard photo sizes are 8x10, 8x12 at 300 resolution. You can actually clear out the resolution, and I'm just gonna do either 8x10 or like 8x12. Okay, I can pull that in. And there we go. And maybe I would clone stamp that if I wanted to keep that little corner, whatever. And then I'll hit enter. All right, and that's it. Again, if you want to go back and make some modifications right here. Don't forget, you can also do some creative things afterwards. There's photo filters if you want to kind of give this an overall warmth. If you want to cool it down, you can add a cooling filter. There's all these different things that you might want to play with. And then what were those other... I think there were some legacy, I forget now where they were. Was that under the gradient map? There were some legacy filters if we wanted to. Legacy gradients. Oh, there were some photo filters, that's what it was. Photographic toning. So these are another thing that you might want to play with. And remember, if something's a little bit too much, you can always knock that layer down. So if you want like a little bit of warmth, but you don't want too much, you can knock the layer down. And that's it. All right.